Kia ora, I'm Miriam Makamwa. This week, Evans Mott created legal history when he became the first person to escape a conviction after helping his wife Rosie to die. He could have been jailed for 14 years, but he walked away from court with a clean slate. The consequences, though, for Rosie's family are ongoing. Tonight, Janet McIntyre with their very personal, at times harrowing experience. Now, a warning, this is an issue bound to confront many of us. Our story begins with the message Rosie left for those she loved.
I am really special, real special.
Especially to her family.
She was quirky and stubborn, very stubborn. She was sweet. She was really, really sweet.
But nothing prepared Rosie Mott's family for the way she said goodbye.
I'm making this movie so that nobody is under the illusion that I've been coerced into what I've done, been murdered.
I don't understand. It's crazy, eh?
Rosie and her daughter Amy were best friends.
She just looks very strong and, yeah, I love that photo.
They spoke by phone across the Tasman almost every day. But Rosie never mentioned this.
Here I am on the 30th of August 2011.
The message she filmed herself for her family to be delivered after her death.
Okay, that's it. See ya.
I mean, I know she said goodbye, but it kind of doesn't feel like she said goodbye.
Not even in their last phone call, just after Christmas last year.
She was, I mean, just sobbing and crying and, you know, I'm saying, you know, what's going on, Mum? And she just said that, you know, it's time and I have to bow out gracefully so everyone, you know, can get on with their lives. It's like, you know, you don't have to do this, you know, like, you don't have to do this. And, I don't know, I mean, she didn't say that she was going to or she wasn't going to. She was just really upset and that was probably about 3 hours before she did it, so.
Rosie didn't want to die. Absolutely, definitively what she said and statement of fact. She didn't want to die. It's just her body had got to the point that she had no life left to live.
Rosie did die, and Evans Mott, her husband, played a part in her death. This week he faced a High Court judge and a potential jail sentence of 14 years for assisting Rosie to take her life, even though he wasn't with her.
I think it's barbaric. I think the system that we have is medieval. You know, if you accept that somebody has to die and that they're incurable, they're untreatable, and it's time and they're suffering, why should they then have to die by their own hands alone when their family and friends want to be there with them to be supportive?
Rosie met Evans in the back blocks of the Gold Coast almost 25 years ago.
An unusual relationship?
Yes, I can say that. Yes, we're both dominant, so it's quite a fireworky relationship. But yeah,
an unconventional, adventurous relationship. They lived in the bush, in the outback and in the islands, with Rosie's 2 young daughters, Jessie and Amy, and later with their son, Kane.
So you lived in a corrugated iron hut?
Yes. Yeah. Didn't like to be held down and didn't like to stay anywhere for too long.
Eventually, though, Rosie and Evans settled in Auckland, in a flat on one of Auckland's flashest streets, Paratai Drive, but they were often apart.
my regret is that Rosie and I didn't have our time together.
Evans travelled for months at a time in Europe and the States, building luxury yachts. And Rosie, an anthropology student, stayed at home in the flat, healthy until just a few years ago.
I'm going to tell you the story, the sad, tragic story of my upcoming demise. I tripped over a cat.
Rosie pinpointed the start of her decline to that accident, which left her with a broken arm and ongoing intense pain. Test after test finally revealed she had the most aggressive strain of multiple sclerosis, a degenerative and incurable disease.
There is no medication that will slow down the progress.
Over 4 years she deteriorated, at times unable to move, at times unable to stop moving.
This is Rosie touching her nose. What you're seeing is A, the inability of Rosie to touch her nose, and B, how an intention tremor works. At this point, I would have to say it is an absolutely devastating disease.
It was the tremors, the shakes, hardly being able to walk, having to sort of stand up and plan every move, not being able to feed herself without shaking. She used to say it's like there's hand grenades going off in my head.
But she could walk.
She could walk, and she never would get in the wheelchair. She was convinced that she wouldn't get through January before she was in a wheelchair, and that was why specifically she decided, no, I'm not going to go into next year, because when she was in a wheelchair, we didn't have a wheelchair-friendly house, and unless I was there full-time to wheel her around, you're pretty much in care. And of course the system, once you're in care, the only way you have any control of your destiny is to starve yourself to death. So she was not going to go that way.
Did she talk about going into care?
She would not go into care, absolutely. She would not. She would have thrown herself off a bridge rather than done that.
In 2010, getting no relief from drugs, her condition worsening, Rosie started talking about ending her life. She bought a how-to book online.
Did you try to talk her out of it?
You know, I hear what you say, I understand what you say, but I don't think it's right for people to go either way. If you know somebody's got a degenerative disease that's hideous, then you're hardly going to say, oh, well, just wait until you're a basket case.
After the break,
I don't think there was anyone who said, please don't do it, Rosie, and that's pretty sad. What was if she just thought she had no one to look after her?
We should make a travel room.
Yeah.
though they lived in different countries, Amy was close to Rosie.
You'll love it. Kobe, no sand.
A young mum raising two little boys on her own in North Queensland, she relied on Rosie for support.
Like on the phone, she was always so upbeat, and you know, she'd be like, "Hey mate, you know, how are you?" And "Oh yeah, I'm having a shit day, but it's okay." What, honey? Yeah, it was probably from the ball. No?
Amy knew about Rosie's plan, but they both avoided talking about it.
In some ways, I wish I'd said don't do it. I hate to think maybe she did think that nobody asked her not to do it. You know, I don't think there was anyone who said, "Please don't do it, Rosie," and that's pretty sad. What was if she just thought she had no one to look after her? And no. I mean, I'll never know that. And I should have been there for my mum. She didn't want me to be there, but I should have been there, and I regret that.
You know, I expected a goodbye, something. I expected, you know, some sort of, you know, this is it. You know, I love you, goodbye. But it never came. I never got an email.
Kane was the only child Rosie and Evans had together. He also lives in Australia. Kane was worried for his mum when he last visited her a year ago.
Do you think she was taking into consideration the pressure she was putting on Evans and all of you by continuing her life?
She certainly was taking into consideration the burden she was throwing on everyone. She realised the way they were living wasn't sustainable.
Sustainable in what way?
Financially, and certainly how much worse it would have gotten.
You know, just buying the drugs and just all of it, you know, it adds up to being quite expensive. I mean, a lot more expensive than somebody who's independent, you know.
Kane told us that he thought his mother was worried about the financial burden she was creating.
I don't think financially she was that concerned. I think more she was concerned that she knew that her suffering was making everybody else suffer.
So Rosie was in pain with an incurable disease and wanted to die. Her daughter in Australia didn't want Rosie to do it, but she didn't actually tell her that. Her son thought Rosie was worried she was costing too much to stay alive. Another daughter in Auckland offered to care for her mum, but Rosie wouldn't have a bar of it. That left Evans, her husband, the one person who was with her. He helped Rosie prepare for the end in December last year.
We had everything so that if she wanted to do it, and it was really the 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st, if she was gonna, she was gonna finish it before the new year, and that was in her head. That's time.
They rehearsed what Rosie would do with a gas cylinder and apparatus they'd bought.
As far as assembling the equipment, we did it together for the very simple reason that you only die once, and it's absolutely essential that she understood how this is supposed to work, because there's no second chance. If it doesn't work, you're probably a brain-dead vegetable.
And on the 28th of December, after Evans returned from an outing, Rosie was ready.
And we just talked, and we didn't say anything sort of mind-shattering. It's just, hello, how you going, how you feeling, da-da-da-da. And then whenever it was, about 12:30 or whatever, she said, okay, it's just time for you to go. And gave me a big hug, and I left. And that was that.
Rosie, alone, administered her own death.
Where did you go?
To the shops and got receipts to prove I was away. But if she'd have been alive when I got back, it wouldn't have been an issue. It's like, this is your time if you want. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you said, I want to get back. It's great.
Do you wish you'd been there?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yes. I wish I could have been holding her hand, and saying, it doesn't matter, mate, you don't have to do it. Or if you want to do it, again, supportive. I mean, that's how it should be.
But you could have stayed with her.
No. You are putting yourself very much in a manslaughter murder situation in that scenario. No, you can't. Not within the current system. It's not possible.
I don't know how he put one foot in front of the other and walked out of that house. So I think it's extremely hard for him too, and especially to come back, knowing then, I don't understand. It's crazy, eh?
How difficult is it for you, knowing that she died by herself?
It's horrible, really horrible. I mean, she had to die with a plastic bag over her head. That's not nice, eh? It's not nice. And just especially have to do it yourself. And I think it would have been scary, and I don't know.
But it hurts more that it was sort of done out of fear. That ability to say goodbye was taken away just because she was afraid that we would all get dragged through the legal proceedings, it would disrupt all our lives.
I hope that everyone I love knows that I love them, and that everyone whom I'm grateful to knows that I'm grateful.
She needed to pass on her own. One can only imagine how it was for Mr. Mott, having to discuss these types of arrangements with his wife as she wanted. In my submission, he was strong, supportive and loyal, and that is what she needed, and I suspect that's what we would all need in those circumstances.
With considerable care, I've reached the conclusion that an order should be made discharging you without conviction.
This week, as Evans Mott created legal history, Rosie would have turned 56.
There couldn't be a better legacy for Rosie. Sorry. Thank God some good come over. What more can I say? Just common sense prevails. And thank you for everybody who supported me.
Rosie's children were surprised but relieved by the outcome. They wish Evans well as he leaves for a boat building contract in Spain.
Okay, that's it. See ya.
Well, in reaching the decision, the judge took into account Mott's unblemished record, his early guilty plea, the low end of his offending, and Rosie's message.